Hi, my name is Megan,
And I'm Jasmine.
and we're doing a video for Equality North Carolina. We thought it was important in talking about this bill to tell you a little bit about ourselves.
So we met 7 years ago, and we've been married 3 years.
That's right. Yeah.
We had our wedding in Asheville in August of 2008, and we were living in Boston for a couple years for grad school, so we had our legal ceremony in Boston on October 25th, 2008.
Yeah, but it felt really important. We met here in Asheville, and Asheville always felt like our home. And so, no matter what the law said, it felt important to us to have a ceremony with our friends and our family in our home. And so we had our ceremony August 16th, 2008 at Bull Creek Ranch in Asheville, yeah, it was kind of incredible. I wasn't sure, honestly. We talked a lot about what it would mean to have a ceremony in what felt like home, but not in the state where we knew we would eventually be able to legally marry. Um, and I'll never forget waking up the next morning after our wedding, and no one can tell you what it feels like to be married, but I felt married. It was pretty cool. It was an amazing feeling, and that was August 17th. That was about 2 months before we got legally married in Boston. And I thought it was kind of cool that no matter what the law said about our relationship, that I felt the same way, regardless.
Yeah, we were married by a good friend of ours who's a minister, and just the experience of saying our vows to each other in front of our friends and family. It's sort of hard to describe what it felt like, but it felt different than anything else, and it felt different than signing a marriage license form, which we did a few months later. And I think, it was having gone to a lot of my friends' weddings. They're straight couples. I'd seen people go through it, and I'd always been moved, and I would cry at my friend's wedding because I didn't understand really what it felt like until I said my vows to Megan and heard her say her vows and realized um, really what a sacred moment that was, and a private moment that we shared with our friends and family who help us try to live out those vows.
Yeah, I think what was really important to me was, it was incredible that our friends and family, many of whom have different political views or different faith traditions, all showed up and stood up with us. I think in my family and in our family, family comes first, and that was a really important moment for both of us. And it was really incredible to see my grandma stand up, and my parents walked me down the aisle. My brothers stood up with us in front of our minister. Um, and my aunts and uncles all traveled from very far to be in Asheville. And one of the things I remember my Aunt Sue saying after the ceremony was that she felt like um, the vows we shared and the things that our minister said in her sermon were things people needed to hear. That it reaffirmed for her what marriage is. And that was something that I think was really cool to hear from people who came to our wedding, was that if you really want an affirmation of marriage as an institution, to see two people stand up who love each other and say they love each other, no matter what the law says, no matter what your community says, that you're going to stick together and be together and commit yourselves to each other, and your community is committing to you. That is, if you ever wanted to see an affirmation of marriage, you should go to a gay wedding.
Yeah, and I think for me, like, one thing that is really hard about this amendment, and it's one of the reasons that I'm doing everything I can to try to defeat it, is that by the time you get to be an adult, you can make sense of the fact that the law may say one thing in one state and another thing in another state, and that what matters is the truth that you hold in your heart, and what matters is knowing who you are and being able to share that with other people. But when you're a 10-year-old kid and an 11-year-old kid, you just aren't ready to do that, and you don't know how to do that necessarily. And I think that this amendment sends the worst kind of message we could possibly send to a 10-year-old kid who I can guarantee you is in every single county in our state right now, every single community in our state right now, discovering that they might be LGBT, 10, 11, 12, 13, and wondering what that means, and chances are good thinking about suicide at some point, feeling depressed, feeling like there's no way to carve out a life where they can be who they are and people will love them for who they are. And
This amendment sends the wrong message to those kids.
Yeah, and I think that defeating this amendment is one way to send a very powerful message to those kids, that there are people all across the state, even people who may not be sure what they think about gay marriage, who are still figuring it out, who are conflicted about that, but people who know that it's wrong to treat people differently, and people who know that that kid deserves a shot at a happy, joyful life, and shouldn't go a day in their life thinking that they're less than the kid sitting next to them.
Yeah, and we left out what we do, actually, at the beginning. I'm an attorney here in North Carolina. And
I'm being ordained as a minister in the United Church of Christ, and I'm the director of the Campaign for Southern Equality, which works around LGBT rights in the South.
that's us.